Welcome back to the Bryan Devore Connection. I am your host, Bryan Devore, and today I am with my friend Aisha M. Williams, aptly named with the Aisha Williams law firm, the law office of Aisha Williams.
You got it.
Thank you very much. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you very much. So you and I have met. Actually, today's the first time we've ever met in person.
In real life.
In real life. But for the last couple of years, we've been working together through the Estate Planning Group Network.
Yes.
We've been Zooming together every month. And I've always been fascinated by estate planning and the work that goes into it. And you're a master at what you do. So I wanted you to come talk about what it is you do. How did you get into estate planning?
It's a long, winding road.
Okay.
Got me here. I actually worked for one of the largest companies here in San Diego, Qualcomm, for 18 years. My last 6 years there were as in-house counsel, but I went back to law school. I was in marketing for a very long time at Qualcomm. My undergrad was in international business, but I always had the law in the back of my mind. And I was at a bit of a career crossroads and made a decision to go back to school. And at that time, estate planning was part of that bit of law that was in the back of my mind. My mother's family had a big fallout after my grandfather passed away, and the fallout could have been avoided with a plan. At the time, I didn't realize that, but as I got older, and then when I went to law school, I realized that all they really needed was a thoughtful plan created with love, and my family could still be whole. There are relationships that are still broken today. And I wanted to help other families avoid that very avoidable situation.
Right. It's one of the things that I think that we deal with in our industry of working with seniors and their loved ones is all about planning. And so many times they don't plan. People don't plan. We sort of bury our heads in the sand, and then they wind up in sticky and unfortunate situations like your family. But we try to make lemonade out of lemons. So
I mean, death can be a very heavy topic for most people, understandably so. It was for me for most of my life. I mean, I took longer to put a plan in place than I should have. But it really is an act of love. You're at a certain point, we need to be a little more pragmatic about our mortality and recognize that death is inevitable. And it's something that we're never going to be able to avoid, and best to plan for it, because if you don't have a plan, the state has a plan for you. And so by not putting your own plan in place, you are making a proactive choice to accept the state's plan. And here in California, which is where I'm licensed and where I live, here in California, the state of California's plan is not very friendly to survivors. And so it really behooves everybody to put some sort of a plan in place.
Well, and that way, your family members, everyone knows what your wishes are for everything, from who's going to take care of your kids to the money and the whole thing. Unfortunately, there are misconceptions out there. And a lot of times people say, well, I don't need an estate plan because I don't have anything, or I don't have kids or whatever. But pretty much everyone needs an estate plan. But it comes down to, as you and I talked about, there's really the three biggest misconceptions about estate planning. So I wanted you to share that with us today.
Yeah.
What is the first one?
A very common myth about estate planning is that I don't need a plan because I don't have a lot of assets. I'm not wealthy. I don't have enough to worry about. And unfortunately, that's just not how it works in reality. I mean, even a baby needs a plan. Young adults need plans. Here in California, many people need trust-based plans or foundational plans that include a revocable living trust. But even if you don't have a lot of assets that would require a probate, which is California's process for dividing assets after somebody's passed away and figuring out who they're all supposed to go to and how, even if you don't need a trust, you at least need a will, so that you have a say in what happens to your one bank account, your one vehicle. You may not want it to go to the people that it's going to go to if you don't document it.
Right. Unfortunately, I recently closed escrow for a client who was going through probate. I was dealing with the brother who his brother had passed away, and just seeing what he had to go through because his brother passed away without a will, a trust, or anything. None of his wishes were known. And he didn't have a whole lot of assets, but he did have enough where just going through the whole process was a struggle for the brother, and it's a problem. So people have that misconception. It's not really the case.
Yeah, unfortunately, our probate clients they tend to not be very happy campers.
Right.
They're usually a little irritated, in some cases very irritated and resentful towards their family member who left a mess for them. And now their loved ones are forced to kind of deal with the chaos and left in the wake of their passing, and not able to focus on the love, the relationship, processing the grief, which is what we as humans really need to be doing. We shouldn't have to deal with this mess, especially when it's completely avoidable with a foundational estate plan.
Absolutely. So second common misconception, speaking of wills, is?
Many people have this, we all have grown up hearing about a will, but most people don't really understand what it actually means or how it actually works. And here in California, wills go through probate. So if you just have a will in place, that just tells the court who's going to get what and how. It doesn't bypass the court process, though. And you can completely bypass the court process with a revocable living trust that owns certain assets, or where that trust is named as a beneficiary for certain accounts. There's a few other ways to avoid probate. There's forms of joint ownership, or if you have a small enough estate. Here in California, the threshold is $166,250, but the court doesn't look at your debt. They're only looking at your gross value of your aggregate estate and the assets that would go through probate. So it's pretty easy to trigger it. If you own a home, the threshold's even lower if you own real property. And so if you have a condo, if you own a home, any sort of real property, the likelihood of avoiding probate is slim to none. If you have minor kids and you don't want them to have to go to court or inherit before everything outright at 18, or you don't want them to have to go to court and have the judge appoint a guardian of their estate, you have to document this. You can't, and you said it's important to document your wishes. That is a key part of an estate plan, but you have to also do it in a very particular way, which is why it's really important to work with a professional, an attorney, who can really hold your hand and guide you through that process, issue spot, look at your life as a whole, and help you put a comprehensive plan in place that in many cases in California is going to include a trust, because that will goes through probate. We have a saying that goes, where there's a will, there is a probate.
Okay, got it. All right, so that's good. That's good information. The third most common misconception, speaking of minors.
Yes.
I never even thought about this before.
Yes.
It is?
Most people assume that if you've named guardians or potential guardians, if you pass away, you need somebody to take care of your kids and raise them the way that you'd like them to be raised. And so most people think that if I name my proposed guardians in a will, that's sufficient. And that's great. I mean, if you're doing that, you're way ahead of the game, so don't feel bad if that's what you've done. That's really, really a great thing to do, but there's more. You can absolutely do more. If you want to make sure that your kids don't end up in police custody in the event of an emergency. Let's say, I'm going to give you an example. Let's say mom and dad go out on a date and they have a babysitter at home, and mom and dad get in a car accident on the way home. Babysitter doesn't hear from mom and dad, doesn't know where they are. They may call the police, and that would be a very responsible thing to do. And a normal and typical response in that sort of situation, you can't get a hold of the parents. The police are going to come. They're going to take custody of your kids. They might involve CPS to get involved temporarily until they can locate some people who they can verify are family members. And during that time, your kids are with strangers. They're in police custody. They're in CPS custody. And in the worst cases, they could get up in foster care. That can happen particularly for families that don't have family members nearby. They may come from other countries, and all of their family members are in a different country. What's going to happen in the meantime while the court sorts out who has the legal authority to care for these kids? So we include a kids protection plan with all of our foundational estate plans. It's just, we don't even like, it's not an add-on. It's so important that we just include it by default in all of our estate plans that include for families with minor kids. And we include temporary guardian nominations, where you can name your friends. You can make it very easy for your family members too. You may not want your mom and dad, grandparents. Maybe you don't have a great relationship with them, but you have a younger sibling that is the only, the person who you want to step in the case of an emergency. You have to document it, and you have to document it legally. We also include like medical powers of attorney for each child. What if the whole family is in a car accident and mom and dad are temporarily incapacitated? We need somebody that we can trust to make medical decisions on behalf of the parents for the benefit of their kids. So, I mean, that's just a couple of the things that we include in those kids' protection plans.
Well, and like you said, just a couple things, and those are just 3 of the common misconceptions. There's a lot that goes into it, so you need a professional.
Yes.
So you definitely want to contact Aisha to learn more about estate planning, why it's important and needed for you, for your loved ones, for your future. Her information is on the screen, so you can see her phone number, her website, etc. Aisha, thank you very much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you.